We have another trade, another wide receiver, and it is veteran DeAndre Hopkins on the move to the Kansas City Chiefs. What that means for both the Titans and the Chiefs, and is Cooper Kupp next, slated to play Thursday, all part of our Week 8 six-pack of NFL picks.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers and appreciate all the new listeners jumping on with us daily here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet at FanDuel and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we got a trade here, and it is DeAndre Hopkins going from the Titans to the Kansas City Chiefs, Matt, for the low price of a fifth-round pick. That could become a fourth-round pick if the Chiefs win another Super Bowl, go back to back to back. That becomes a fourth-round pick, probably extremely worth it for the Kansas City Chiefs if that DeAndre Hopkins helps you get there for a mid-round pick. Otherwise, it's a fifth-rounder that will go to Tennessee from the Kansas City Chiefs and probably be a late-round variety either way for the 7-0 Chiefs now. Who wins this trade? Is this the right guy for the Kansas City Chiefs? Because I think fit starts to get really important when you start talking about which wide receivers go where. And we're talking a little bit off the air about Cooper Kupp, and we're going to get into that in a minute. He's maybe not a fit for everybody. And Hopkins, also a veteran receiver, a different player than Cooper Kupp, and clearly is going to be a lot cheaper in trade than Cooper Kupp for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and it's good for the Titans. Just give me a draft pick. We're young. We're not going anywhere. Things are pretty miserable there. It's definitely good for Hopkins and especially Mahomes' fantasy value, which leads me to a conversation I just had with Kate and Marcus on Locked On Dynasty. We were talking did a whole segment on just this trade. And it was interesting because I've been saying for a while, I feel like the Chiefs are a weapon short, whether that's James Conner, Travis Etienne, a speedster receiver to replace Marquise Brown, some kind of Rashee Rice type player, an upgrade on Juju for that role. Hopkins is kind of none of the above. And Marcus had the point, too, that there's not a receiver in Mahomes and Reed's history. And then I went even to say, going back to Reed with the Eagles, that is similar to Hopkins that was featured. There's a lot of speed guys, Macklin
and Deshaun Jackson.
There's nobody like him, right. But they're an adaptable group. I'm sure that they'll figure out a usage for him. And he certainly has the old man game that if he's not a great separator, if he's not a great burst guy, but you have to earn that trust a little bit, to throw into contested, situations for a receiver. Will Mahomes just do that right off the bat this week? Maybe. I don't know. But I think it helps the offense. It makes some sense for the Chiefs, but it's not an easy move. It's not a round peg, round hole necessarily,
I mean, DeAndre Hopkins had old man game when he was 22 years old.
Exactly. So, exactly. Yeah.
He's still good for 10 points and 10 rebounds, He'll box you out. He's got ridiculous ball skills. That stuff's not going to wane. And I think the big difference is Hopkins not only cheaper in trade than Cooper Kupp, but Cooper Kupp is like purely a power slot. And Juju Smith-Schuster is kind of already in that role. And then you have Travis Kelce in the slot role. And then you have the rookie and Xavier Worthy. You can move around a little bit. And Mecole Hardman. So you do have some speed. I think they need someone who you can move around and utilize in different matchups, but someone who can win a little bit on the outside that Mahomes can trust throwing the football to. And for that reason, I really like it. And so I do like the fit there, and he could play outside. They need an outside guy, even though he's not, of the speed variety. But they have enough speed on the roster. They have the middle of the field covered. They need someone who can win on those comebacks and some of those throws. So and in the red zone too, where the Chiefs have been great. So for that reason, I do like the fit with DeAndre Hopkins and Patrick Mahomes. And look, he's shown with with Travis Kelce, like and I don't know. Obviously, he's played with Kelsey's entire career, but how quickly can you build that rapport where you really trust the guy and you can go backyard and like here, kind of rebound.
I'm sure DeAndre is just like, throw it up, I'll get it. Like there's not much needed. Just trust me a couple times, and I'll prove that I can go up and pluck the ball even though I'm covered. And anyone watching tape can see that's what he does. Now, he definitely has an old man game and is going to age gracefully. But I don't know if he's good anymore or not. Like, I feel like this year is very little indicator of, is he better or worse than he's been in the past or not? I mean, it's just bad situations, some injuries,
You saw this with Devontae Adams. You almost feel like some of these veteran players are in these situations are kind of shutting it down a little bit. Even with the
Kupp's hard to get a grasp on what he is at the moment. And,
Yeah. And I think, we are going to talk about the Raiders because they're playing the Chiefs in a little bit. And Max Crosby is interviewed, and he's like, I'm here to win games. I'm not here to rebuild, because he had taken the stance where he's like, I'm not trying to get traded. And then he was asked the question after the Devontae Adams trade, and he's like, well, look, I'm also trying to win games and not trying to rebuild. That's not the vibe. So I think veteran players, especially, someone like DeAndre Hopkins, and in fact, Hopkins took to social media and he just said activated was his words. So
fun.
He probably got a lot healthier. It feels a lot more spry than he did 24 hours ago, I would imagine, for DeAndre Hopkins. And of course you would going into this situation. If you're a wide receiver, you get to go play with Mahomes and an undefeated Chiefs team that's back-to-back Super Bowl champs. It's phenomenal for him. If this give you a shot in the arm, I don't know what will.
Are you starting him in fantasy? Like, is he a top 36 receiver this week? Now,
maybe not this week, but I would
project there the rest of the way.
Like because we saw what happened. It's tough week one, even for a veteran player. We saw with Amari did get a touchdown catch though, right? For the
he did.
But he dropped the ball too, and didn't look quite great for Adams, and it takes a little while. So I don't know if he's an auto start right now, but I think looking forward, if I had to pick who's going to catch the most balls for the Chiefs the rest of the year, as far as wide receivers, I'd probably pick Hopkins.
I mean, he could definitely catch 6 touchdowns the rest of the way.
Absolutely. So fantasy wise, love it for the stock there. And again, smart move for the Titans. You have to, you're collecting draft picks, and he's not going to be part of the team next year as a free agent anyway. So
does this help Ridley's fantasy stock? Or I kind of just want nothing to do with Titans passing game period.
I hope he's on somebody else's roster on my in my league already and just taking up space.
Yeah, exactly. He was a free agent in my league. I picked him up yesterday, not even knowing the trade. I'm like, hey, maybe I'll throw him at the end of my roster.
So getting into our 6-pack of picks in week 8, the Thursday nighter is the Los Angeles Rams hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings coming off their first loss of the season against the Lions last week. And the Rams are 3-point underdogs at home here on Thursday night.
I have breaking news. It's not very big, but at least it's news. Another trade. I just love that there's all these trades.
I love it too.
Seahawks sending linebacker Jerome Baker and a 4th-round pick to the Titans for Ernest Jones, straight up. I mean, speaking of the Rams, remember he got traded to he got cut or traded to the Titans. Now he's going to Seattle to play against the Rams, and they're getting Jerome Baker back. So a little linebacker swap and pick up a 4th-round pick in the meantime. So,
I like, hold pause on the Rams here for a second, but they're kind of related here.
Yeah,
you're kind of double agent, right? Because there's no way the Rams are going to trade him to you. I've talked about this a lot on Locked On 49ers. If the Jets keep losing games, I don't think the Raiders want to do business with the Niners and trade Devontae Adams over. But you might be able to get Devontae Adams from the Jets easier. And I think this is that situation where the Seahawks are like, well, wait a second, we like this guy. And now you had a third party, an intermediary, and to kind of launder the money a little bit. And then you can go get the guy who was just with your division rival to start the year, who they've missed this year. So interesting. Yeah, that
is kind of funny.
Clearly, that McDonald defense there in Seattle, they've had injuries, and they've also they brought in Robertson. I always mess his name up, but big defensive lineman, 5 technique guy that can set the edge, give you a little as a pass rusher, sort of tweener to build that odd multiple front that they have there with the Seahawks that they're trying to build, and now add a linebacker to the mix, which clearly they think they've needed there. So this is when you said Seahawks are trading away, I thought, oh wait, they're not
be Lockett or something.
So it was a buy there, and I think
linebacker swap. Yep.
The DK Metcalf trade makes. I thought Lockett could be somebody that, even though they're competing, that maybe that's a player that they could send or maybe get something back for Tyler Lockett, but with the MCL with DK Metcalf, I think that probably takes that off the table for the Seahawks. And they're trying to win right now. So,
Yeah.
an addition for the Seattle Seahawks. I like that one.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. So Jones, who we were going to talk about, the Rams, goes from Rams to Titans to Seahawks to play against the Rams. It's kind of crazy.
Very interesting. Okay, so back to the Thursday nighter next. We've got the Los Angeles Rams hosting the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to talk about the upcoming Week 8 matchups for the Chiefs, for the Titans, who have been involved in those trades, and Alvin Kamara extension. With I think you're going to have to explain this one to me, Matt. We'll talk about the Saints and the Chargers as well, and a whole lot more, including the Monday nighter with the Steelers, all coming up in our Week 8 six-pack of picks next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Game Time and the Game Time app, which is the place to find great deals on last-minute tickets or any tickets if you're trying to go see your favorite NFL team play, college football team play. You want tickets to the World Series? Those might not, you might not get very many last-minute deals on those, but man, I've got some great last-minute deals on tickets last week. I went to go see one of my favorite bands that was coming through town. They sold out the first show, so they added a second night. And I said, well, if I can go to the Game Time app and get a good deal, I'm going to go to the second night too, because it was so good the first time. And guess what? I got half off the ticket price with Game Time. And now a new feature called Game Time Picks at Game Time that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets potentially, especially if you're trying to go to a sporting event where you're looking for seats in a 60,000 seat stadium. There might be a lot to sift through, so you can find the best deals with Game Time Picks. All-in pricing, view from your seat. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. The next segment of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy, and now you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action. And in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And it's the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured, leaves in the first half, doesn't return in the second half. Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. For example, the Thursday nighter. Welcome back, Cooper Kupp, potentially, unless he gets traded first. 0.5 touchdowns, more or less than. How about Justin Jefferson, 6 receptions, more or less than? It's that simple. Pick 2 or more players. You pick more or less than their stat projections at Prize Picks and watch the money roll in and get $50 instantly. When you use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. So about Cooper Kupp and those Los Angeles Rams, who are 3-point underdogs at home Thursday night, hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings coming off their first loss. Maybe the fit wasn't great. Maybe the price was too high for Cooper Kupp to go to the Kansas City Chiefs. But apparently, according to reports, Diana Rossini said that the Rams might be trying to trade Cooper Kupp and willing to pay his salary if they could get that second round pick by doing so, which is a white flag move to me for the Rams. So is that where the Rams are? Because that affects how I pick this team. And a healthy Cooper Kupp can help them win more games than no Cooper Kupp at all. But is he even going to be on this team? And do you even play him if you're trying to trade him? But if you're a buying team, do you need to see him play before you trade for him on Thursday night?
Yeah, I had this really a similar conversation on the Steelers show yesterday. Like, the Steelers play Monday, and then they have a bye. Like, if you're talking to the Rams and you have compensation worked out, do you want him to play and then come to Pittsburgh and stand on the sidelines on Monday night, and then over the bye you get him acclimated? Or do you say, well, I know he's coming off an injury, but I don't want him getting hurt? Or, you can't – I'm sure they're not going to be like, yeah, how about we just run 10 routes for you and show him off? Like, you're either going to play him or not, and – I thought he was going to play last week, and then they shut him down like 10 minutes before the game. It was kind of a surprise scratch. So who knows? I guess we could see both sides of that. Like what's better? Do I want one game film of most recent, or do I just want to trust that he's healthy and doing okay?
As
that
for
being
the
said,
yeah,
I'm going to pick the Vikings.
Right.
I mean, I just think they're a much better team. I hate taking road teams on Thursday night, but I think they win by a field goal or more. I think the Rams are in a bad spot.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Exactly. As I know you don't like those the road teams on the short week Thursday nights, but I think a pretty ticked off Minnesota Vikings team had their first loss against a white flag waving Rams team that's not very good, whether Kupp's on the field or not. 3 points is not enough to scare me off of that. So I got to go with the Minnesota Vikings here on Thursday night.
They could win big too.
Right. Yeah. They could just completely blow. Matthew Stafford has to be available in that case, right?
I would think. I mean, it's a much bigger conversation. Maybe we could even intertwine that on Mailbag Day, but I don't know where he could land. Like I could see him being like a Giant or Jet next year.
Yeah.
But not now,
With bad quarterback play aren't really in it anyway. So they're not
right.
And, Stafford is probably going to be in it to win it himself. And a player like that would have a lot to say about where he goes, because this is a Stafford move would be a future move. You look at a team like the Browns, who have we'll talk about the Browns game here against Baltimore.
Miami doesn't need him anymore.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Miami would have made a lot of sense if you were going to shut down Tua, but Tua's back now. So, yeah, I don't really see a great fit for him, but you have to be thinking about that. And that's a complete rebuild.
Yeah.
Because you could envision maybe a retool, which is kind of what they thought they were doing this year. Maybe they should completely rebuild because the retool didn't work because they're just not talented enough throughout. Well, the best way is probably Stafford, but that might have to be an off-season plan.
I just don't see a fit.
The Kansas City Chiefs, with DeAndre Hopkins now in tow, are at division rival Las Vegas, who are switching quarterbacks yet again with the injury to Aiden O'Connell. And the road, it's a rarity to have a road team favored by 2 scores. 10 points is the line here. You're getting 10 at home. That's a big home dog swing for a division rival, Matt. Is that tantalizing enough for you to take the Raiders and get 10 points?
Raiders secondary is terrible. I think they're terrible, but I do think Minshew gives them a better chance to win or helps your betting side of things. And I just don't know that the Chiefs are structured to beat teams by 30 anymore. I mean, it's defense, it's first down, success rate, and Hopkins gives them a little more buzz. Maybe that inflates this line more than it should. I think I'll take a home team. There'll probably be a lot of red in the stands, but I'll take the home team division game double digits.
I hate what's going on with the Raiders, and then
man,
Chiefs actually adding more. But a home dog division rival getting 10, that's a teaser.
A lot of what Reds flags,
Yeah, I'm going to take the Chiefs.
I get it. I wouldn't touch it. I would not put money on the Raiders, but it just seems like it's 2 points too many.
There's another huge line, and by the way, I know DeAndre Hopkins is not like a sneaky downfield fast guy, but could he potentially help the yards per attempt? Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs passing games, they're like Roethlisberger Steelers level yards per attempt. Like, this is kind of wild. There's nothing down the field for that team right now. And even when they had one last week to Worthy, got behind the defense, Mahomes missed them.
Yeah. No, I think so. Because I think Hopkins can still run 20 yards downfield and go up and get it against corner. I mean, you might not get behind him.
I mean, an 11-yard pass still raises that quite a bit.
Moves it up, right?
The Kansas City Chiefs with where they're at right now in that passing game, dink and dunk style. The Tennessee Titans, the other side of that trade, are at the Detroit Lions. This line even bigger, but the Lions at home are favored by 11 points in Week 8, Matt.
I feel a lot better about laying the 11 on this one. I think the Lions are a total juggernaut. Tennessee's got big problems. Doesn't send a great message to the team that you're sending, somewhat one of your best players, even though he's older. Talk about waving the white flag.
It has been waved.
Yeah, I think the Lions blow their doors
off. That's the most likely outcome. But the Tennessee Titans defense
is good. Yeah,
sneaky good enough to keep it close. And it's really that run game, because that's what the Detroit Lions could do to you, is just kind of run you off the field in a game like that where they get a lead and then lean on you. But the Tennessee Titans, I think, can, at least on defense, keep this close enough to where it's not a complete blowout. But again, where do the points come from with that Tennessee Titans?
I know. They may not get the 10,
Yeah.
Lions D is still good without Hutchinson, and
I'm gonna take the points on this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glad
Just
we're differing though.
Gut feeling that it can stay somewhat close with that defense, and that the Lions don't need to go win by 1 million. Even though
just control it and eat the clock at the end and win by 10,
Next, we've got news about who the starting quarterback is going to be for the Cleveland Browns as they host the Baltimore Ravens, and an Alvin Kamara extension for the New Orleans Saints against the Chargers, and Monday nighter Pittsburgh taking on New York to finish up our Week 8 6-pack of NFL picks next. The final picks today are brought to you by FanDuel, and all of the lines we always reference here on Peacock and Williamson and the entire Locked On Podcast Network are always brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And if you want to get involved in some of this action and bet along with us or maybe against us, that's okay too. NFL fans right now can start big. I mean, get a huge return on FanDuel and immediately get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All you got to do is sign up at FanDuel.com or download the app. And by the way, when you're there at FanDuel.com, you can find all the latest stats, live play-by-play, and more when you're watching games Sunday, and maybe inform your next bet at the very same page that you are making those bets at FanDuel.com. And again, get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet on any of the lines we're talking about in today's podcast or many more. Tons of props, tons of sports, World Series, you name it. You can find it at FanDuel.com. All right. Jameis Winston will be the starter for the Cleveland Browns, who's the best quarterback and probably has been the best quarterback this season for the Browns. And they're getting 9 points at home now with Jameis Winston as the starter with the visiting Baltimore Ravens. And I filled out the Locked On Podcast Network power rankings this morning before we recorded. And I did put Baltimore after that showing last week as the #1 team. And I had the Lions 2 and actually had the unbeaten Chiefs 3. But potentially
that's my top 3 exactly too.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
We're in lockstep there. So the best team in football, Jameis Winston at home. Can he change the outcome this season for the 1-6 Cleveland Browns?
I say no, but I also think that he's so aggressive and teammates love him. It might be like the first time that the Browns are in like good spirits and excited about a game all year.
And the fans at home excited, actually cheering for their quarterback instead of cheering for Winston to replace the guy who was actually on the field.
Yeah.
I like the home dog getting 9 points here against the Baltimore Ravens, as crazy as that sounds, man.
See, I think it's more okay. I mean, I see both sides. I wouldn't touch it. It's a big number. And the Ravens pass defense isn't great. And I'm sure Winston's going to chuck it like crazy. And maybe he hits on a few. But I just think if you're betting on this game, you might have a lot of early energy from the Browns. But by the fourth quarter, Derrick Henry's got about 140 yards and Lamar's got 60. And your defense is like, do I really want to keep doing this? And then you lose your bet. So I'm going to take the Ravens.
I think that the defense for the Browns is a big difference. And it's added. A quarterback change helps the defense more than we're considering right now for the Browns. Yeah. It should be a lot better on that side of the ball. And maybe a little, change quarterback bump there. A rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. But that could definitely go the other way against this Baltimore Ravens team. But I
just think that'll be short-lived after tackling Henry all day.
Yeah. The inevitability of
right. Like
pounds coming at you.
We're still not going anywhere either with Winston, who threw 2 picks in the second half. And
right,
I'm tired of tackling this guy.
Aside from some of these wide receivers that we have a feeling we're going to be on the move, the #1 guy I thought would get traded before the deadline potentially was New Orleans Saints running back Alvin Kamara. Yeah. Instead of getting traded, he got a 2-year extension, Matt. And I don't get it forget the how do the Saints avoid salary cap problems and sign a guy? I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about a 30-year-old running back that is not part of the next Saints good team that you're giving an extension to in his declining years. You should be getting a draft pick for Alvin Kamara at the deadline if you can, not extending him.
100% agree. But my hunch is when I pulled up the contracts, I wanted to look at it. So the whole key, kind of like you mentioned, is they open up $18 million in cap space for 2025, which is a nightmare, as it always is, a year away from the Saints. So that's really what they're getting out of it.
It's just
I still would rather have a draft pick.
They're just kicking the can down the road.
Of course, as they always do. I don't think they're learning their lesson at all. But I wonder, like, it's easy for us to say, why not just trade Kamara to the Chiefs or the Cowboys or whatever? But he still wasn't happy with his contract, and he's just signed a 2-year, $24.5 million deal. I bet nobody was going to give him that. Like, if I'm the Cowboys or Chiefs, I'm like, I'm not giving you $12 million a year at your age, you know? I mean, so I just think it's bad business by the Saints when it all comes down. I mean, it's just a desperate move for more cap space next year.
So they can be extremely mid again in 2025.
If they're lucky.
Because they started out so hot. And those New Orleans Saints now, as we get back to our six-pack, the New Orleans Saints are at the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Chargers are big favorites, actually, against the Saints here. 7.5-point favorites at home are the Chargers over the Saints. And this is another ugly one. It's a tough one because the line is big. The Saints are bad. They have a rookie quarterback that looked like a disaster last week, even though he looked okay the week before. But the Chargers aren't the type of team to blow anybody out or score a whole bunch of points. So, you know, you're getting over a touchdown here is pretty tantalizing to take the road team here against those Chargers. So which way are you going with this one, Matt?
I was shocked this was over 7 too. But it comes back to a conversation it seems like we've been having all show. I don't know where the Saints' points come from. I mean, could they trade Olave? Could they, could they do things like that at this point? I have no idea what their thinking is, but I just think the Chargers keep them under 13 points. So do I think the Chargers get to 20-ish? Yeah, I do. I'm going to take LA.
Where does the power slot fit best? Because what about Cooper Kupp staying in LA? The Chargers clearly
I like that
receiver, but they did draft a guy who's sort of an intermediate underneath slot player, and Cooper Kupp for sure fits better in an offense that's going to spread it out a little more and do the power slot thing. And that doesn't
blocks though. I'm sure Harbaugh likes his style game.
So
yeah,
I can see it fit, but they're too wide and. He's not a pure outside receiver. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, he can play that just fine. He lines up in a lot of places, but the real value for Kupp is the power slot, and so that doesn't fit for me for the Chargers. Does it fit though for the team playing on Monday night, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are hosting the New York Giants? And every time we talk about a wide receiver potential trade, we got to talk about the Steelers. They've made a lot of calls. Can they bring a deal home, Matt?
I think he fits best with the Bucs. I mean, he's the Godwin. I mean, that's a pretty close slide him in, big slot, move. Steelers aren't an 11 personnel very much, but personality-wise, he fits. Blocking-wise, he fits. They could use another leader on offense. So, yeah, I think he fits, but it would cripple his fantasy value. That to be a terrible landing spot for him in terms of production. He's not going to get 12 targets a game.
The volume wouldn't be there, but as far as like being a very different player than George Pickens and he's actually more similar to Van Jefferson, which is where he came from the Rams.
They were teammates, right?
He's a rich man's version of Van Jefferson, really. But that makes a lot of sense. And
I'd take him.
The Steelers were willing to dangle a second-round pick for Ayuk potentially. So could they make that happen for? And to be honest with you, the Steelers are probably.
I think it's a third.
The Steelers are in a situation where they're like, well, you don't have to pay all the salary. We'd rather, because the Rams want to pay the salary to get a better pick. The Steelers might say, well, we can fit the salary in, but we want to give you less of a pick.
I had that same conversation yesterday. I was like, if they're asking for a second and they'll pick up the salary, you probably could get them for a third and they pick up the salary. But if it's truly that's the asking price, I would say, how about I give you a third and I pick up the salary? I'm going to take the Steelers to win, by the way, on Monday night.
The Giants are a disaster. The Giants are really low in my power rankings I did this morning. And is it Drew Lock at quarterback this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night?
I should know that by now, but I'm assuming it's Jones. And how about this? Russell Wilson has the 7th most wins in primetime history, 33. Meanwhile, Jones is 1-14. Yuck. There's a lot of stats that don't bode well for Mr. Jones. But
so last week, Drew Lock replaced. I just to just kind of set the stage here. The last week, Drew Lock replaced Daniel Jones after getting blown out by the Eagles. I don't know if that was just a reset for Daniel Jones, and I don't think we're going to know quite yet. And that Monday nighter is a little ways away. So on Friday, when we break down these games again, we might have a better idea of this. But to me, it doesn't matter. It's not like Drew Lock is going to be a lot better than Jones. It's not like Jones was good either. So it doesn't change anything.
Doesn't change it for me.
Let's have a chance to whoop up on the New York Giants here at home on Monday night. So I'm giving up the 6.5 points.
Me too. The big thing that concerns me is like Dexter Lawrence versus a backup center and their pass rush overall against, a beat up offensive line. The Giants might be the best pass rushing team in the league. Their front is really dangerous.
And the recipe to defeat the Steelers is to stop the run first, and then cover up Russell Wilson's ability to throw the ball deep and outside the numbers. So can they do both of those things is the question. But Dexter Lawrence, probably my vote for defensive player of the year right now.
Yeah, it'd be hard to win it on a bad team, but nobody's playing better.
And it's like it stands out even more how good he's playing that he's on the Giants to me. Because they don't have a lot of other, Brian Burns is really good, and they have some players, but it's like, oh my gosh, if like this defensive front's kind of keeping him in some games, but everybody else is so bad, it's pretty obvious how good this guy is. And so he probably won't win though because he's on a bad football team.
And he's a nose tackle, but still,
right. He's putting up the numbers. The stats are there despite being a nose tackle right now. Can he keep that up? Can he end up with like 12, 15 sacks?
Yes, I think he can. And I dug into him heavy this week, of course, but like by next gen stats, of course, he's like leading the league in sacks. He's leading the league in pressures, but he's also far and away the most double teamed player in the league. Wow.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So good start for the Giants. Can the offense pick up the slack, whoever quarterback is? I have my doubts. And who knows, maybe Cooper Kupp will be on the sideline, or Mike Williams, or somebody with the Pittsburgh Steelers by Monday night. A little extra day to get that player potentially ready to play somewhat of a role. Although, man.
Speaking of sacks, though, they gave up 8 against the Eagles. They maybe give up 12 against Watt and Highsmith and Hayward.
Yeah. My guy, Calvin Austin, though, I'll be sad if he goes to the bench. He's one of my big draft wins. I like Calvin Austin, and he didn't do anything his rookie year. They kind of put him on the shelf. I was like, oh no, maybe he's too small for the NFL. But he's carved out a little role for the Steelers this year. So that's been fun to watch.
He's been okay, yeah.
But they're trying to replace him in the starting lineup at least.
They need it too. Somebody closer to Pickens. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a number 3 gadget guy. That's what he is. And so
better route runner than given credit for.
Yeah. There you go. The 6-pack of picks for week 8 in the NFL. Let us know what you think at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Get your questions in for tomorrow's mailbag. You can drop them on YouTube as well. Subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.